Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Drake Meyer, and he is the VP of Operations at Atomix. And we're going to learn a little bit about what's the latest with Atomix. We're going to hear a little bit about Drake's background. We're going to talk a little bit about 5S and continuous improvement, something I think Drake is a big fan of. And we'll learn about that and his thoughts around that. And we'll also talk a little bit about kind of the tech stack at Atomix as well, which they recently announced they're going to market with their own WMS that they've been using in house. So we'll find out a little bit about that and what that's like versus getting an off the shelf WMS and why they've gone that route. So we'll dive into that stuff and some other things around operations in general. So, Drake, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Definitely, and Drake joining us from the outside. I like this. I think we've only had a couple guests join us on the podcast that have been outside before. So love to see it. Very tropical vibes he's bringing us today. If you're watching on the video here, so appreciate that. So Drake, you're the VP of Operations at Atomix. So for people maybe that are not familiar with Atomix, tell us a little bit about what you all do.
Yeah, Atomix, we're, you know, somewhat a standard 3PL. Do things a little bit differently. We're a young company still, only about 4 years old, but
Mm.
we are growing super fast. So we got a building in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Got a building in Salt Lake City, and recently got another location in Baltimore. We have our own WMS, which makes
Mm.
us a little bit unique, but we're more of a little bit of a high touch 3PL than most, I would say. A lot more customer interaction than I've seen in the past. Really
Sure.
focused on, you know, 2 day shipping or less. Um, we do a lot of special project type stuff for people. We're a little more involved with returns than a lot of other 3PLs may be. But yeah, um, like I said, been unique being in a fast growing environment like
Mhm.
Atomix is. It seems to be changing um, every month on how we can best take care of our customers.
Yeah, yeah, interesting, and I've seen the growth for sure as I've watched guys from I guess the LinkedIn world and talked to Austin. Austin's been on the show before a while ago though, so happy to hear the growth from there and the continued success that you all are having as well. So now you're the VP of operations there. So I guess tell us a little bit about your background and because you've spent a lot of time in the operations world. So tell us a little bit about how you got into it and what you really kind of love about being in this warehouse operations world.
Yeah, sure. So, uh, coming out of high school, needed work, right? So I
Sure.
was lucky enough I got a job at Pepsi, working second shift, driving forklift and picking orders,
Mm.
and kind of just never looked back from there. I've really always been in warehousing. Um, Kind of a natural fit for me. I'm not really. I kind of like the behind the scenes kind of thing, just getting a little bit dirty, get a bit of a workout kind of vibe. So kind of
Mm.
that's the mindset I had going into it, is I really didn't want to sit at a desk. I kind of wanted to be using my hands.
Yeah.
But as things unfolded, I kind of just kept moving up and moving around to different companies, and um, I've held pretty much every job you can in a warehouse at this point. I was supervisor. Um, I've been an outbound department manager where I really only had to focus on the outbound side of things, which I really liked. Then was promoted up into a operations manager. Um,
Mhm.
that was here in Jacksonville for Patterson Companies. They were one of the nation's largest distributors of dental and vet medications. So
Okay.
pretty unique environment there.
Yeah.
Company have been around longer than light bulb. They've been around 150 something years.
Really?
So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, so kind of a taste of the big corporate world, but also kind of felt like a small tight knit community in the warehouse. People have
Mm.
been there for 20 years, so really got a kind of unique feel for how operations should run when everything is running right. Right, these guys had a lot of time to build it. Came into that uh, operation at a unique time when we were switching from a legacy system to SAP, and we
Mhm.
also switched to voice picking, and we switched to pick to box. So kind of opened up a a lot of opportunities for us to change all the different processes. Um, so yeah, became the ops manager there, ran that building for a while, and then um, joined Ship Hero and worked there for a while. Again, opened my eyes a lot to this 3PL world and WMS tools, implementations, and how we
Sure.
can use the WMS to really improve the operations and not just be restricted on what the WMS can do, right? So had a great culture there, loved that job too, and yeah, now here I am at Atomix. Really enjoy it, right? One of the things I like most about working in this environment is it's a lot like sports, so
Mm,
kind of gotta put the right people in the right positions. Takes a lot to like motivate people and create the right culture to get things done. You know, good jerseys don't win games, right? You got to have the right players, the right time, the right training. So you kind of bring that mindset into operations and
yeah.
can make it a little more fun. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I think it's like such a great point there in the leadership perspective. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm curious, like, because as you said, you've been in multiple different roles, right? As your career has progressed, right, and now up to VP of operations. So I guess tell us, because it's actually surprisingly something like we haven't really talked much about on the podcast in the past, but from a role perspective within operations, within warehousing, I mean, what's the differences as you go through kind of these different levels of leadership, whether it's from supervisor to ops manager to a general manager, director of ops, and now VP of operations? How would you kind of define the differences in those roles, and what are the differing kind of responsibilities in there?
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, looking back at it, I really enjoyed all the roles I had. I mean, I still like to
Yeah.
get dirty, right? I do miss the days of just jumping on the forklift and rocking it out. So usually I try to
Sure.
section off some time for that when I'm on site. But then yeah, as you get into supervision and in leadership, obviously comes a lot more responsibility. But what I really liked about it is, if you have the right culture and you're empowered, like it really is just trying to fix a big puzzle every day. Every day there's something different to fix. So I like to be creative with it and try to like find better ways to do things, even if it's just making it look better, making it more user friendly, making it more enjoyable for the employee. But I think what's helped over the years is just trying to remember and feel like I'm a floor employee. How would I want it to be done so it's easier for me?
Mm,
Everything from schedules to the way the warehouse flow works to the tools you have to how you're talked to how you're listened to, that kind of stuff. I think the more responsibility you got, though, it's comes a lot of careful what you wish for, right? I think when people
mm,
are warehouse employees and supervisors, it's very easy to say, well, if I was in charge, I would do it this way, or if I was in charge, I wouldn't have made that decision. Once you get up to, you know, director VP role, that excuse goes away pretty quick, and now
mm.
you're the guy that has to live with the schedule you set and live with the purchases you spent money on, and which is fine. But I think that's where that experience of having been there and done that as a floor employee pays off a lot more than some might think, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, for me, it's just sort of been a natural progression, just trying to make things better, right? Trying to help the team
Mm.
get better, and kind of always have your head on a swivel for the next opportunity to make make a bigger impression, make bigger changes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that factor that you mentioned there of having the on the floor experience, right? And really understanding like what those employees that you're ultimately leading, right, are going through or have gone through and have, felt it yourself a little bit too. As you mentioned, you started out there just drive around on a forklift doing stuff in the operations world. And I think that's so important to understand to make sure that you're making better decisions, right? Because oftentimes, I mean, I certainly saw like in my career in operations where a leader hadn't had that experience, right, and made some kind of decision, and I'm sure you probably have seen this
Yep.
at certain times too, where it just doesn't make sense on the floor, right? The decision, and it's like it's almost like a little revolt, right? In a sense, like,
Yep.
why would you do this? It's so much harder now. Like now it's slower and all these things, right? And that kind of connection to the floor really helps to make those better and smarter decisions without having to do much reiteration or any kind of reiteration on those processes at all. So I'm curious, as you've kind of progressed throughout your career, what's like the maybe some of the top leadership tips or advice that you would give to people that are kind of trying to go through the same progression?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest ones, especially in the warehousing world, is like to kind of go at it with, the motto we had at Patterson was like constructive discontent, right? Like it's never
Mm,
good enough. There's always something that can be done. Um, I would always get frustrated when I came into my sites and it looked exactly the same as it did 3 weeks ago when I was there.
yeah.
So I think when people can wrap their head around that kind of concept of like every day I can do something to make it better for the
Mm,
team, right? For the processes, making the SOPs better, making the floor look better, looking at schedules, right? Looking at the tools, even just getting to know the team a little bit more every day. If you can just chip away at it every day, you look back 2 3 years and like for me at Patterson, I was there for 5 years. I think I touched every single desk and every
mm,
single area I had gotten to and done something to make it better. And I think that helped me progress a lot because I learned about all the areas, right? And
mhm,
I got pretty good at seeing a mess that other people might not see because they're there every day and quickly finding a way to just put in an hour worth of elbow grease and step back and people are like, wow, this is way better than it was, right?
mhm,
If you can get the team on board with that, then and they start doing that and everybody's doing that before you know it, now people are hunting for the inefficiencies, right? Wherever that is in your
mm,
building, in your operation. So
yeah.
a little bit of that. And then I think just getting to know people, right? Like you really need to know your players, right? If you don't, you very well could have like your lineman playing quarterback, right? You need to
Mm,
know who's got the
yeah.
skills to do the job.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm,
And then, again, sports wise, if you're having a slow day, you got to put your backups in and give them some training and give them some time. And so there's a lot of, I think, the cultural part of it of just making sure people are empowered, making sure they're heard, showing them how easy it is to make something better, and then motivating them to like come up with ideas, right, and help make it
mm,
better. I think that did more for me than really anything I learned at college or in the field. It was more of just the day to day how you go about trying to make it better, right?
mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that, that kind of continuous improvement mindset, right? And trying to figure out like, like you said, like how do I make this a little bit better every single day is the way to go about it. Because, if you think about it in like a huge transformation change perspective, it becomes very daunting, right? But if you're like, okay, well, if I can clean up this area of my operation or I can make this process, a couple seconds faster, like today, like I could tackle that today, right? And that's something that can get done. And that just compounds over time. And then, like, as you said, it starts to get ingrained in the mindset, right? And it starts to get contagious as well throughout the operation, which I think is really, really great. So I'm curious, like, obviously you have a mind for continuous improvement and 5S and things like that, right? And I saw you post some things on LinkedIn about, the new pack stations and improvements and things in the past that you've done at Atomix. So I'm curious, like, what was the kind of first moment where it unlocked, like, because I tend to think of that as almost like a third eye in a sense, like this, like you develop this eye for kind of like waste and opportunity for improvement. I'm curious, like, what was the first kind of project or moment where that really clicked with you or kind of made that unlock in your mind?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's been a lot of big ones throughout the years.
Mhm,
Um, we implemented an audit by weight system at Patterson, which was really exciting.
mhm,
We only, I believe, like 10% of our SKUs were barcoded, so we couldn't use the typical 3PL scan verification at pick or pack. So we had 10 to 20 bodies lined up in check belts, auditing boxes off of paper with a
Mm.
highlighter and making sure it was right. Because this is like medications for animals, like it has to be right, right? So
Yeah.
we were spending a lot of labor there. And whenever we got errors, which you would have, um, that was like our biggest metric that we all were competing against other warehouses for and really trying to figure out how to fix. And really, the only solution we had was more training. Like more training, more training. You gotta train them better. And we tried a bunch of different things. And one day I just like I'm done with it. Like we just got to solve it once and for all. We just got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be something better. And it's pretty easy like solution at the end of the day, but it took a lot to get there. But ultimately, it ended up leaning on weighing the product because we had description, we had quantity, we had weight in the WMS, but we weren't using weight. And
Mm.
I had pitched it a bunch of times, and it kind of fell on deaf ears, and for good reason. We had like 70,000 SKUs, and we had little
Yeah.
birds that went in your mouth, and our lightest SKU was like a weight of a sheet of paper. So
Mm.
people thought about it for a second, and they're like, "That ain't gonna work." Like,
Yeah.
well, let's try. Let's figure it out, right? I didn't have a budget, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I just started cold calling scale companies, and
Mm.
eventually I got a hold of somebody who taught me what I needed to know about scales and like the industry. Found a scale that I liked, talked the sales guy into letting me borrow it for 3 months, and we thought we had something going, but then we realized the weights weren't right. Like nobody really
Mm.
cared if the weight was that accurate. So I had to weigh 70,000 SKUs to get them accurate. Um,
That's fun.
yeah, so at this point, my team is like, "This guy's crazy. What are you thinking, man?" Um, because I actually had to like take my battery out of my boat to plug onto a cart to power the scale, so I don't have to run extension cords throughout my building. Right? Like, we're getting
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really
I
gritty,
love
right?
that. Yeah.
But my team was behind me. They were on board, and they're like, "Let's do it. Let's figure it out. Let's
Mhm.
tackle this." So once we had the weights updated, we built something out of Excel and started playing with it, and then we built an in-house program. And then once I had the data, we really crunched that, and we found that we could just find the right algorithm to determine if we should check it or not. We reduced the amount of boxes we needed to check by like 70%, and then our errors just fell off. Like we stopped getting calls into the fulfillment center because people weren't really getting mistakes anymore because we were able to like hone in which boxes probably had an error, which changed the whole mindset of a packer or a checker. They no longer needed to stand there for 8 hours a day and maybe find an error. Now they
Mm.
were pretty sure there was an error in there. So once we had that data and showed everybody what we were actually doing in Jacksonville to reduce our errors, then it caught some wind and we started a program and spent over $1 million on inline scales and
Mm.
SAP WMS enhancements, and then it rolled out, right? So now they have it at multiple sites. So that was a big one that kind of got some motivation for me of like if we got the idea and we are willing to put in the work,
Yeah.
like, you just got to do it. You just got to go after it. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of those. Not as many so big, but probably my earliest was when I was 19 and I was working at a paint finishing place, and one of the things that we had to paint was manhole covers. They look like a manhole cover.
Okay.
We paint the whole thing red primer, and then we would
Yeah.
tape one side and we would paint the other side gray, and we do like 500 a week.
Oh wow.
And we had a whole team of people masking one side every day, and then I don't know how I came up with the idea. It was pretty dumb after I realized that we've been doing this way. But if we just hung the manhole covers back to back and zip tied the bottom of it, we no longer needed to tape them. Like
Mm.
supplies and the labor, you just paint them all red, hang them back to back, go ahead and paint them again. Um, we cut a lot of labor there and process, and at first everyone was like, "I don't know, man, what are you talking about? We've been doing this for 10 years. Like, leave us alone." I'm like, "Hey,
Yeah.
it works, right?" And then
Yeah.
came up with a few more ideas there, and then I think that's really where I got my itch, where I was like, "Hey, let's
Mm.
there's puzzles everywhere. You just got to come up with a little bit
Yeah.
creative approach, right?"
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I love that, and I I love that you took the battery out of your boat to power the scale. That's great, genius, definitely, and I love that, and I feel the same about operations, right? I feel like it's just there's a problem. to solve, right? And I love that you described it as like a puzzle too, right? It's like, okay, well, how can we make this better, and let's think about this in a different way. And obviously you run into that other mindset that you talked about there too, or a second ago. That's like, well, we've been doing it this way for 10 years. Like, why would we change the way we're doing it, right? But I think the progress in operations is certainly like challenging the status quo, right? Like, how do we make this better? How do we look at it differently, or bring a different set of eyes, or something like that, to do that? So very interesting to hear those stories, and and definitely love that kind of innovative thinking, and digging into all those different things. So tell us a little bit about, from Atomic's perspective, right? Because you all have your own WMS that has been developed in house, right?
Yep.
Um, and I guess when we were going to schedule this podcast, didn't know this, but saw, like, just I guess in the last week, I think, right, that you guys announced that you're gonna go to market with the WMS for other people to use too as well. But tell us a little bit about kind of the tech stack at Atomix, and like, how does having your own in-house WMS, like, how does that differ from getting something off the shelf?
Yeah. Um, so it's nice having your own WMS. I mean, it comes with pros and cons. I mean, some of the off the
Mhm.
shelf could be really good at things that we wish we had, um,
Mm.
but we don't really have much adaptability, right? I've had off the shelves where it's like just frustrates you so much you can't get a certain piece of data, or you can't do a process a different way, and all you can do is ask. Well,
Mm.
it's nice that Atomix is, our tech team and Andrew are super smart, and they're super hard working, and they can pump some stuff out super fast. So really, they're kind of hungry for us to give them our ideas to the solutions and try to help them figure out what would be better, right? What's the picker thinking? What's the packer thinking? How could they find a loophole? Like, where's the shortcut they would try to find? And how can we figure out how to like make sure that can't happen? Um,
Mm.
so, as far as the tech stack goes, like I'm a lot more heads down on the floor trying to make it be as user friendly as possible and give my ideas as much
Mm.
as I am in the tech backends trying to like making it work. I'll leave that up to Andrew. But um, for me, it's been really nice because you know data is the most important piece of our operation,
Sure.
and we have all the data. Like we know all the all the clicks, when everything happened, who touched what when, and now we just got to figure out how to read it and what we want to know, and that gives us a lot of power in like our decision making, and ties into everything, right? Like how much time are we spending in each area? How much should we be spending in each area? How much should we charge in each area? Like, um, so it's kind of a never-ending puzzle there too. Like what
Mm.
else can we pull from it, right? And what else can we add to it to make it more user friendly?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's such a great thing to have, right? Is that, like, connection to the floor, and the user experience becomes so important. So I'm curious too, like, from a technology perspective, like, obviously, in the industry and as a whole, right? There's a ton going on with a lot of these, like, advanced technologies as well. Certainly, tons of talk about AI and robotics and automation. You're very much, into the operations side, and then the physical aspect, and the continuous improvement. I'm curious, like, how do you view some of these technologies that are rolling out, and some of these more kind of advanced solutions that are now, like, hitting the market?
Yeah, super exciting, right? I'm all for it.
Mm.
It's honestly been a little hard to keep up with it. It gets moving so fast. Like,
It is crazy. Yeah.
yeah, like I get good at something, and then I got friends in the industry too that'll show me something I had no idea that you could do, and it
Mm.
just throws me down a rabbit hole and try to make processes better. What I'm focusing on right now with it is just streamlining all of our processes basically, and trying to eliminate as much clerical work as possible, right?
Mm.
if if I can capture the data, AI can do a lot with that data to help you make good decisions, right? uh,
Mhm.
Reporting, exception reporting, um, how we talk amongst departments. There's a lot of that there that we don't really need bodies for that anymore. I mean, back in the day, I kind of needed a guy that was really good at Excel, and I kind of
Mhm.
needed a guy that was really good at like bringing us all together and like um, keeping us aligned on priorities and meetings and stuff. Like, not necessarily need that anymore. Like I can build a website in 10 minutes on my couch. It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
So definitely using some of that. One of our vendors, Raybo, I'm a big fan of. We've been using them for a while, and they're really into
Sure.
the vision AI, and I think there's a ton of opportunity there for quality, for production purposes. Making sure that we're shipping it right, making sure that we're packing it right, making sure that people are having to watch an SOP instead of just here's the SOP file, go read an SOP if you want to, or you have to read them when
Mhm.
you start here, but then hard to manage all that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of cool things that I'm working with them on as far as um, quality, production, um, and there's a ton there with vision. Um, but yeah, I mean, who knows where it's going? I think it's really going to touch everything
Yeah.
other than just like the pure people and managing people. Like you really can't touch that, or at least I don't see that happening. You still need good coaches, and you still need good players, and you still need to practice, right? Um,
Mhm.
but a lot of the tools we're used to using are, I think, quickly going away. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's super, super interesting. And like you said, I mean, the same. I mean, I'm talking to people all the time with these solutions, and same. I feel like every week I see like something else new and something different that somebody's doing with AI now or something like that. It's fascinating, and it's really cool, but it's also like very hard to keep up, right? And also know like, okay, well, which one is the right one that I should like invest my time in, right? And start to explore. So it's very interesting there. So you mentioned the kind of the coaches and the players there, right? And still having that kind of human element in place. I'm curious then, like, what's your view on kind of the robotics angle and the robotics solutions that are coming into the warehouse world?
Yeah. I mean, it all depends on your operation and what fits for you. There's a lot out there, right? I've used VLMs in the past and I feel like that's a really good solution
Mm,
if you're dealing with, uh, space issues. Um, I've used NVIDIA robotics before, which I really enjoyed, but it really kind of fits more into a large warehouse because at the end of the day, it's really just reducing your pick path.
sure.
Um, I'm a big fan of like the what Brightpick is doing, bringing you a fully picked order to a pack out, like
Mm,
eliminating picking, which is pretty pretty impressive. But now you need to spend a lot of time decanting into it, but it's probably a huge gain there if you do that right. Um, I think the robots that kind of were hot a couple of years ago that kind of went with the picker and kind of helped take the weight off the picker. Um, we used some of those back in the day, and um, interesting to see where that goes, how much that can take off the picker, or do we just eliminate that picker, right? Um,
mm,
Also, done some testing with some of the robots that can pack out for you, but just not there yet, right? It's just not fast enough, and it's not intuitive enough to like pack out as fast as a packer. So it'll be interesting to see if that can get to that level, at least for 3PLs to be able to purchase and use, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't spend a lot of time daydreaming about what would be the best in my warehouse for a robot system. I'm trying to
yeah.
get there and get to that point where we can really dial in and start identifying what the best solution is for us. But um, I think first you got to have all your processes buttoned up and your team pretty solid before you try to add something like that.
Mm,
But it all depends what you're up against, and it seems like every couple of months there's a new thing that comes across my desk that really gets me excited about what could be coming, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting because to your point, right? I mean, the kind of pick assist AMRs that you're talking about, the robots that will like follow the picker or take away some of that travel time, like we've seen a lot of advancements, like you mentioned, Bright Pick in there, certainly on like, the kind of gripper technology to be able to grab those items. So like, are we getting closer to, those picks just being done by the robot themselves instead of the human interaction. I think maybe, right, but I think you have a great point. Right? What's the right operation? What's the right application for those to happen? And there are a ton of optimization that can happen before you get to that stage, for sure, to be able to implement those. So very interesting, talking to you here and learning a little bit more about Atomics and kind of your background and your views on continuous improvement as well. I'm curious, like as we close this out, like what would you say is like the one key fundamental to have a well-run operation?
You got to have the right culture, I think. Um, People need to want to come to work. They
Mm,
want to be excited about fixing problems. Sometimes that takes a long time. Sometimes it happens pretty fast. Depends on what it's like in your four walls, right? Are people empowered? Are they? Is it dark and grimy and frustrating, or are we constantly trying to make it more enjoyable and people enjoy the people they work with and they enjoy the people they work for? Um, it's night and day, right? If you can create that
mm,
culture, everyone's jobs become easier, right? Managers don't have to hound you for being late and not doing your job or pulling your weight. Um, and then, the harder you work at it, the better the team gets, and they kind of weed each other out themselves. Like nobody wants to work with somebody who doesn't want to be there, and that kind of just does its job for you. So I would say the
yeah.
culture is the biggest piece.
Yeah, I like that one. Definitely. I think that culture is incredibly important, and certainly to get that operation running and have people that want to be there is certainly a key aspect. So appreciate you contributing that fundamental for us here, and that tip for any future leaders out there or existing leaders that are trying to figure out how to make it work. So really appreciate you coming on the show today, Drake. And if people are interested in learning more about Atomics, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, check out our website. It tells us everything about our WMS, our what's unique about us, and plenty of links and tutorials and all the information you would need is right there. Or feel free to reach out to me directly if you see fit.
All right. Awesome. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here. So, Drake, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Good talking to you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.